Okay, why don't we get started?
Sure.
My name is Grant Margret, and on behalf of the Bennett Adelson team, I'd like to welcome all of you to our continuing series of webinars on demystifying the Microsoft Cloud. Today's webinar is a jumpstart to the Power Platform. In the next hour, you'll learn how to leverage PowerApps to customize your business applications, improve agility, communications, and streamline operations. Our presenter today is Bruce Szabo. For the past 13 years, Bruce has been a technical strategist at Microsoft and a lot more years before that. In his role, he's worked to help customers become educated on all the various Microsoft solution areas, AI, data, modern workplace, business applications. But today, and currently, his passion is the Power Platform, which is our topic today. So without further delay, let's turn the program over to Bruce. Are you ready, Bruce?
I am. Thanks, Grant. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you beautifully.
Excellent. So as Grant said, my name is Bruce Szabo. My contact information has been up on the screen. So I think I jokingly said, if you're interested, feel free to reach out. If you hit me up on LinkedIn, let me know at least that you saw from this presentation. That way I have some context on why you're reaching out, but generally from a building a network, I'm fine with that. So my passion right now, Power Platform, I'll say specifically PowerApps. So if I do a bit of agenda, the first 10 minutes or so, a level set where I see the Power Platform is, what exactly it is, the different pieces that are part of it. And then I'll go into, I'm only going to go over PowerApps today. I really thought if I was going to create a series of webinars, I'd start with one and I try to get you useful or get some use out of PowerApps so that you could click a button and have something happen. As I was telling somebody, there's nothing more powerful than you click a button and something happens. And it's a bit unique in PowerApps to how that actually works. So I want to level set there, show you how you can get up and running with creating an app from data, and then connect to some content.
His audio dropped out. Bruce, can you hear us?
Are we back?
Yes. We're back. Yep, I can hear you now.
Yeah. With great power, everybody on the line, comes great responsibility. Please don't mute me again. So I'm speaking. I'm on the conference room. The conference room one is the one that I'm speaking in case somebody had to mute something. So Power Platform, what I wanted to do is make sure I give you a decent overview and get you into PowerApps so that you can create something with a PowerApps and see how that goes about. The Power Platform itself has 4 areas right now. The 2 on the right came out via Ignite, but Power BI, our analytics engine, has been around for a long time. At Ignite, we had a product called Flow, and it was now Power Automate, which in Cleveland, it's nice not to have Flow because when I talk to people at Progressive, they always get it mixed up anyway, so it's nice. I actually like this name change as opposed to some of the other ones. Some other things that are really important, and we'll get into at least one data connector or one connector, and I'll talk a little bit about connectors because I think they're powerful. AI Builder, if you want to add AI to one of your applications, you can really do some cool stuff with AI and start to really bring some very powerful concepts into this low-code, no-code environment. Again, why am I passionate about PowerApps? Because I can do just that. So I am able to leverage AI in a way that hasn't been before. And I think Satya talked about it at the keynote at Ignite, if you haven't seen it, about tech intensity, that everybody needs to up their tech game. My kids, your kids, my parents, maybe not as much, but right now, if you're in the field, right, you have to be thinking about tech intensity and upping your game. And I think PowerApps does a great job of doing that. And then the Common Data Service, it's a star of a show from an enterprise standpoint. If you're in a big enterprise, I think the Common Data Service will evolve more and more. It's a big concept to get your head around, definitely more than I wanted to cover in a 1-hour seminar. As a matter of fact, each of these probably is at least 1 hour to get you on an intro, and then, minute to learn, lifetime to master kind of thing. So the real idea is that we get all our developers to do more, and I'll have some slides on there. There's a role for professional developers. I work on an account team. We have an account manager, we have myself, and I have an Azure dev person on our team. And we walked into a meeting and the customer said, we need a solution that does some translation, but we don't have a lot of time to dev. We don't have a developer available to us. So we left the meeting and I said, I think to prove out that we can do this, let's try and create the first app via PowerApp. I did that, and then the developer took actually what I had, modeled it into an actual application. So you could see, hey, if nothing else, we could prototype it. And even our account manager didn't like the way we formatted things. So she went in and got all the colors, formatting, everything set up for the way the app, how she wanted the app to look. And then we could come in and wire it up. So there's a role to be played here that becomes way more accessible than a full developer environment would be. I also like the line that, I'm not a developer, but I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. And I think the thing at the top, and my experience has been, you don't have to be the smartest person in the world, but you just can't give up on things when you're working with any of the Power Platform, whether it's Power BI, Power Apps, or Power Automate. Sometimes you're going to run into things. Everything seems doable. I haven't found anything that I haven't been able to do, but there are times where I spent way longer than I thought a low-code, no-code environment should take. But it was just finding that one example. And once I found that example, things really started to, I'm going to say flow, which no pun intended to the whole product. But if you like to do things and you like to tinker, you're going to love PowerApps. Right now, and this slide I put in here, there is a lot of people starting to develop on PowerApps. We're starting to get a community. You'll see some contact information if you're interested. Hey, I want to have a user group. I know there's a Power BI user group in Cleveland right now that I'm a part of. In my brain, I want to get a PowerApps user group going because I'd really like to. Somebody else decided to present their desktop. I'll get it back.
Sorry.
That's okay. Hopefully anything you weren't working on wasn't just seen by a few of your closest friends. So anyway, the community is growing. It's growing every day. Danish Sakar is now in charge of the community from a Microsoft standpoint. I saw something on LinkedIn where she's looking for people that are interested in becoming community members. So along the bottom there, I actually have like a baseball card and trading card snapshots of each of these people who have become PowerApps champions. And they really got their claim to fame within Microsoft for creating PowerApps. Mark Lee, the guy two from the left, actually did something with Belron, which is the parent company for Safelite, known in Columbus pretty well. But their field service agents are actually using a Power App to come out and work on your car and work all that through. So it has the ability to scale where you would think no code, low code, hobbyist, and yet I'm starting to see it in more and more enterprises. And I think you'll see it from Ignite. I think Chevron presented at Ignite, and a couple other large Lumberjay, a few other large enterprises have center of excellence practices around that. There's a governance kit that to help you with your center of excellence and making sure that what I've heard in the enterprise is, oh, this is notes all over again, or here we go, access databases or info path. I just feel like there's more reporting tools now to dive into this information and not run into that. We had no idea that this was happening. My passion for PowerApps started when our CEO, Satya, said in January that the Power Platform is one of our key platforms. It was also one where when I was talking to Bennett Adelson about this, I said, yeah, I'm 100% in on this because Satya's been talking about it. I think he's talked about it. He definitely did at Ignite and on each of our earnings calls. So it's also a technology that you can invest time in and know that you have a ability that it's backed by Microsoft and it isn't just going to go away like some technologies, I don't know, Zoom or something like that. So the Fitbit, the band or whatever. And then in the industry, I am also starting to see low code becoming very popular. There's probably 4 companies in the Gartner upper right hand magic quadrant, and Microsoft is right there. You can argue about who's leading where and what it is and how accessible the technology actually is. It will be really interesting to see where that develops. But again, the resources that we have behind it and the things that keep rolling out month over month are amazing. I'm going to skip, I had that other momentum slide. And this is one of the things that I want to show. So, hey, PowerApps, we'll jump into it here, where you can use it. The one thing that I wanted to pull out on this slide is that strong enterprise governance and security. So this is built on Microsoft's cloud, and we are committed to both customer privacy, security, data leakage, and governance so that you can tell who's doing what in PowerApps and govern it. So I think I can go in and start to dev. But before I do, the one thing that I wanted to do is do some examples that were simple and attainable and didn't scare people away. So on the right-hand side, you have Visual Studio. Back in the day, I liked to open up Visual Studio. I could write some apps, some WinForm apps. They did really cool things. And then somehow I wasn't coding every day, and I opened up Visual Studio, and the scaffolding and all the code that was there literally scared me. On the left-hand side is the PowerApps development environment, which I'll get into live in a second. But again, much simpler, much cleaner, a lot less squiggly brackets, which as I tell people, squiggly brackets tend to scare me, even though I have done some dev. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to try to avoid the cooking show of cutting and pasting. So what the good side of that is you get to see everything I'm doing. The downside of that is that there'll be some pauses as things get up and running. But basically, here is the PowerApps environment. If you go to powerapps.microsoft.com and you sign in, you're in your environment. I am in my Microsoft, not Microsoft account, but Bruce SZA at Microsoft.com. This is my environment that Microsoft gives me. I have my own environment up here that I can play around and create apps for myself and my team. I have not done a lot of those in this area. I actually use the main environment as well for Microsoft, but for this, I wanted to use this demo environment. So if you want to learn about them, you have some learning skills down the left. You can query it. docs.microsoft.com has a lot of good learnings. But now if I want to go into apps, I have the apps that I've currently created, and I can create an app. And I'm just going to create a blank app. PowerApps ID. I tried to make sure that I had enough things in here so that I could come back and not run into the thing where I do a demo, and then because I've done the demo one time, my next demo fails because something's already created. So all I'm doing right now is I'm creating a blank Power App, and I get it's called a canvas app, and really I get a blank canvas right in the middle of the screen. This is where I'm going to add my controls and do things on the screen. On the right hand side, I get properties of the controls. Across the top, I have, in this case, I just have the main screen. So I have screen one. If I look over on the left there, screen one is the only thing I have. And on the left hand side are all the properties. If I want to fill the background and I want to change maybe the color of the background, in this case, I will use a lighter gray. Maybe you see that change depending on your resolution. But I can start to play around with these properties. And very simply, all I want to do is I want to start to insert controls and create an app. So I'm just going to create a real simple Hello World app from the ground up. I can add controls either they're here on the left-hand side by clicking on the plus-hand side, and you'll see the picker of controls that I have. Also along the top navigation bar, there is also a way to pick controls. I think that with that flexibility, it's both good and bad in some ways. If there's only one way to do things, sometimes it's a lot easier, but having both ways does provide some flexibility. So I'm going to just throw a button on the screen, and I'm going to change the font size in the button. So two ways: I can go over to the properties of the button, or I can click the drop-down box over here, change the size. You'll see 15 over in the right-hand corner with the properties, 15 like you would expect here. Change that to 50. And then I'm going to also insert a text box. So I have my button and I have my text box. Now, as I told somebody, all I wanted to do is get to some place where I can click a button and something happens. So what happens when I click a button in PowerApps? Well, when I'm designing, the first thing that happens is when I click the button, I highlight the label. If I look over on the side where it shows controls, you can see that my button is highlighted. I can rename the button. We're not going to get that fancy here. I'm going to click the drop-down box and go on select. If there's a dev in me, it wishes that on select was actually on click, because I want to click the button and that's what I want to have happen. But because in trying to keep everything consistent, I have an on select for my button, but I have on select for other things as well. So it makes sense to me. But on select is what's going to happen when I select the button. And here what I want to do is I want to set a variable, and I'm going to call this text or input box. So something there, and say, hello world. So what I've done is say, okay, I'm going to create this. I'm going to keep, when I click on this, I'm going to create this text for input box, and it will be, that variable will be set. Now I want to tie that variable to the input box. Now the couple of things that you found, if you start typing text, I get the text for input box variable name. So I have the IntelliSense is what it's called, the control to actually add this variable to this box. So now I have my text input box and I'm all set. It's labeled. When I click on the button, it should put hello world into the variable, and the variable should be tied to my input box. If I run my application, so I'm going to go back to my input or back to my IDE screen, I can hit F5 or I can hit the little play button in the right-hand corner. And if I hit the play button, the app launches in the browser, and when I click the button, hello world appears. When I'm done testing it out, I close the window, and what appears on the screen, and I left this, again, back to the non-cooking show, what it's telling me here is that I didn't have to actually run the app to get the behavior that I wanted. I could have just held down the Alt key and clicked the button in order to get that behavior. So the other thing I wanted to do, so I'll demonstrate the Alt key, but let's also do another thing is, when I was prepping for this, when I first started using PowerApps, I was like, oh, I can do this one thing, and when I click the button, I can set a variable or I can do some other information. And you'll see some things that we do when I hit a big connector. But I want to do multiple things when I click the button. And how I do that is if I hit the semicolon. So now I'm ready to put in another command. In this case, I'm going to set a font size property or variable. I'm going to call this 50. So I didn't like that the hello world is smaller than the button font, so I'm going to change that to 50. So as we just learned, if I hold down the Alt key, so you can't see this, but I'm holding down the Alt key on my keyboard, and I click the button, and nothing happens because I didn't set the size property on this to that variable. So I set the size property. I knew I was going to have one of those. So now the size property, because the variable was set, automatically changes. So if I go into the button here, hello, done saying the world one, Bruce, maybe we want this to 60. Now if I hold down the Alt key and I click the button, you'll see a little bit bigger, change the name, voila. So hopefully you see from that cooking show type, non-cooking show, showing you each step of the way, a bit of how you can get started with PowerApps. I'll pause. Are there any questions in the?
We have a question regarding licensing. Do you want to take that right now?
Yeah,
or
no.
later?
Well, I will definitely hang around at the end and
Okay.
we'll do the licensing question on that
All right.
at the end.
Okay.
That one may require multiple interaction and people coming off mute. So
Okay.
if people can hang around to the end, or if you have to go, shoot me, that one's definitely more than a thing. So
Okay.
way to really kill a webinar, man. Okay. So that was a bit of a quick tour around PowerApps. If I come back to the presentation, the next thing I want to do is something called CRUD. So hey, it's really cool that you can click a button and have something happen, and you can do some stuff. I'm going to do better than changing the font and showing some other thing. I'm going to connect and do a translation app and show you how to wire up something. Like, I hope that this cooking show is more than how to cut up a tomato. So we look at doing some CRUD, and CRUD is create, read, update, and delete. So you have to update data, or you want to update data someplace. How do you do that? Well, PowerApps has this concept of starting from data. Now, before I start from data, I wanted to go, and this is a bit of a jog around Excel. So I apologize if this is a bit pedantic for some people, but you can connect. I wanted to connect to Excel and not a SharePoint list, because I was thinking, if I create an app, like one of the apps that I like to create in my when I'm working at a company is the football pool app. So create the weekly football pool app. I've done that. I've done it in WordPerfect macros, actually, and I convert it to Word. I have not done it in PowerApps because of time and because, quite honestly, there's football pool things everywhere. This probably dates myself as to back in the day, there weren't football pool apps everywhere on the web. So a couple of things here. If you're going to work with Excel as a data type, and I wanted to call this out because this, again, from a cooking show, is I get in these things and I see somebody demo it, and then I'm a little bit lost. But note that there's a worksheet called devices and a worksheet called manufacturers. But when I'm on the devices worksheet, if I go up into the design for the table, note that the table name in the upper left-hand corner here is also called devices. And if I switch to manufacturers and go into the table, in the design view, the table name is also manufacturers. That's important to keep in mind as I go through and I show you this next demo. So I'm going to close down this first Power App and go to the next one. And I'm going to start from data as a Canvas app. In this case, I picked one. It's actually going to be a phone app, and you can see that in the lower left-hand corner. I did this demo for somebody else. They're like, why is the screen so small? It's because I consciously picked a phone app. And this is one, if you do our apps in a day, if you've done the apps in a day, this is part of the apps in a day where you really start from this and you build out this application a little bit. So I'm going to create an app in my environment. So I get to the next screen. It says, okay, you're going to start with data, but where is this data? Now, I did do one cheat from the cooking show thing, is I already connected to my OneDrive. So I connected to my OneDrive for Business. When I click on that connection, it says choose an Excel file, and it enumerates my OneDrive for Business. I come down to, in this case, where I store the file, which you might not care, projects, my hands-on lab content. And the Excel file I just showed you is called device order data. Might not have dug into that. Now, here's the key, is even though the tabs on that Excel file were called devices and manufacturers, it's having me choose a table. So you have to create the table in order to be able to just connect to it this way. But when I connect to the table, a bunch of stuff happens in the background. It's really building out an input, an editable app for that Excel spreadsheet. So you can think of, hey, I want to create an Excel spreadsheet. I want it sent out. I want it filled out. What's a good way to do this? You can create a centralized Excel spreadsheet and then have people fill it in, and even start to get some rudimentary control over what people can put into the spreadsheet and add things without giving them full access to the spreadsheet. So when I created a blank app, I started with screen one. Here, I have significantly more things happening on the left-hand side. I now have 3 screens, and they're the kind of screens you'd expect for a data input app. I have one that browses, one that shows detail, and then one that shows edit. And you can see, even more so, I've populated the data in the spreadsheet. I can actually run this application and you'll see it's already fully functioning. I can go to the next page and see what's going on with the devices. I can scroll down through the devices if I want. I can really start to play with this. If I close the app here, you'll start to see bigger concepts too. Is if I click on that plus sign, you'll now see that the on select goes and gets the new edit form and it navigates to that. So two things happen there. So the apps that you create from data are a great way to start digging into the different controls and things that you have with PowerApps while creating the app. And if I hit play and I go I feel like that this is one of those things that you have to demo, but I click edit here, I get rid of the demo on this screen, hit the checkbox. Sometimes it does feel a little David Copperfield-ish, that I'm just really proving something that you would expect would work. If I then go back into the device order table, you will see, hopefully you saw it there. Is that the device? Oh, I must not say enough time. Didn't update it, or I pulled the wrong one. So, pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Oh, wonder if it didn't sync it yet. But sync it on the web. My bad. It's not on the web, it's waiting to sync down. I'd have to go get to the OneDrive one. I'm not gonna do that. But trust me, that stuff, once it syncs back down from my actual OneDrive, then it's all good to go. So, but considering I'm on the webinar, I'm probably losing some bandwidth here. The next thing here is connectors. So hopefully your favorite connector is here. I've played around with a number of these. I've played around with Twitter. I've played around with Twilio. I've used connectors in like Power Automate to go out to Bing and find a way home and send a text message was to my wife, like, hey, I could be on an app, I could have a flow on my phone connected or a Power App on my phone and say, hit a button, and it would text my wife how far away from home I was on drive time. And yeah, I guess I could have called her or texted her, but I tended to forget to do that. And it was just infinitely easier to just have a button that I connected, that I hit on my phone that basically told my wife how far I was when I got someplace. And she knew if I was going up to Detroit and I hit that button that she knew how far I was home, but also that I got safely to Detroit. So our own little signals sounds like something in like a Taken movie that would lead to my rescue. Because PowerApps is a cloud-based system, we do have the concept of a gateway to on-prem. So if you want to access SQL Server or some of your on-prem data sets, you can do that via this on-premises data gateway. So back to the demo here that I want to do is around leveraging a connector to our translation service. So I'm going to create a blank app. Late demo. So I recently had a real world example where basically the customer was saying, hey, we have these agents and they get texts on their phone and they go out to like Google Translate. I doubt that they went to Bing Translate, but they went to a translation engine. They would take the texts that they got, pump them into a window or into the translate engine, get it back and send it out. They're like, we want to automate that. We'd like that to be a little bit easier. And I said, okay, so there's a couple of things here that you can do. Is one, if you create a connection, we have this thing called Microsoft Translate. And here it is at the bottom. I'm going to use V2 of this translator. I connect to it. This does tell me, and this is one of the governance things, I need an advanced license for this. So we'll get to licensing questions at the end, but you need this advanced licensing. So it tells you you're using a premium connector. This is part of the governance. One of the things that our enterprise customers ask us is, don't surprise me. Like if somebody's creating an app, at least don't, have them create an app for 20,000 people. And then I realize, and now you're not bound by the licensing, but they've wasted their time creating this app and they didn't know that they had to actually license some of this stuff. So in the translation app, what you're going to need is a text box. So I come back to my favorite input text. So this is going to be my text input text. I'm going to need a button And back over the properties, I'm gonna hold this button translate. Make it bigger because of the screen. And the input box, I also want to make multi-line because some of the text can be a bit longer. And then, so in that box, I'm going to put some language, probably not English. And I'm going to want to translate it over to a different text box so that I can paste it back in or do something with Twilio or something from a text standpoint. So I have these boxes, and what I want to do now is I want to go back to the button. So the button is where we're going to do stuff here. And as I showed you before, we're going to want to set a variable called txt translated to, and now I'm going to use this this translation engine. I'm going to say Microsoft, and again the IntelliSense breaks up the different things that I have. So I can detect the language, which is very useful. When I created this, and I'm going to do the first half of this, but basically you can send in the text that you want, and it will tell you which language it is in, which can be useful. But here I'm going to just translate. And when I pick this connector, you can see above it, it gives me a clue. It says to the target language code, for example, in this case, FR, which would be French. I know that I want to, the box on the left is going to be the text that I get from somebody that I want to translate. So I actually want to translate to English. In the text, then it says, well, what text do you want to translate? And if I come back over to, I want to look at my text input control, which is text input 1. So I'll say text input 1, which is the text box on the left-hand side, and I hit which property do I want? In this case, I want the text of that box. And I make sure that I close both parentheses. Back to the cooking show, that's usually like a step that I forget. And notice when I haven't finished that step, it tells me that there's like an end up, something happened, and I don't have the expected characters yet. So, and when I close that text box, then everything, the X goes away and I know that I'm in good shape. So I have my variable text translated, and that's what I want to set this default to. So now, once I put my text in and I click the button, my translated text will appear here. So here then is where my high school Spanish skills got tested for this demo. I didn't remember nombre at the beginning. So this, if I can up the size a little bit. So just saying hello, my name is Bruce Szabo. I hit the Alt key, and when I click translate, boom, I get hi, my name is Bruce Szabo, exactly what I would expect. What was interesting is I went out and I played around. You can find just with something like this, like Korean, like I found Korean. When I put Korean in there, it was very cool, which again, I guess I'm saying it, I have a translation engine, so let me show you that one. You can come out here, and who knew there was common Korean phrases. Then you just hope you don't pick one that's like insulting, right? So I'll pick this one. Now this is a bit more of a cooking show. Going down the Alt key, hit translate, as I want to see. So to me, that was really cool. It was one thing to do Spanish and test my Spanish, but when I could do Korean and detect other languages, so played around, very cool. It turns out that in the customer service rep we had, they were actually getting a lot of Korean texted into them, which surprising. It was Spanish and Korean were 1 and 2 on what they wanted to look like. If you want more information on the translation and that capability, it turns out that there are a lot of languages and a lot of advances being made in that translation. So this field is really good as well. So the translations are pretty good. And they can be modified if you're looking for something like that for your own company. So going back, so powerful connectors. Hopefully you've seen that. Are there any questions? Anything that?
No, if
Okay.
you have any questions, please type it into the meeting chat and we'll get to them
Yeah.
as we go here.
Yeah. So,
All right, wait, hang on a second. Question.
okay.
Once you create an app from data, can you change the source? For example, move it from Excel to Azure SQL?
Yes. Yeah. Again, you're going to have to stay right there, but yes, it should map. You're going to have to map the controls. But yes, I have not done that. So it is doable. It's not like you're bound to it, but it is more involved. You might be like, depending on how much customization you did, you may actually be like, okay, now that I know this works in Excel, I'm going to create the SQL tables and then just like map it to that data. It might actually be easier to do that than saying like going in the controls. I don't want to make a commitment on, oh yeah, it's a piece of cake. You set it up in Excel and then flip it over to Azure SQL. So I'm not ready to say that yet. But again, if definitely something that maybe I try for next time. So the AI builder, I mentioned a little bit about this, but really this is train your model and add your model to it. When I showed you those trading cards or the PowerApps champs, one of the guys was from Coca-Cola, and they actually have field reps that use a Power App for shelf restocking. So what it does is it tells you how many Mountain Dew are actually on the shelf and texts that back to the distributor sends it back to the distributor for refill from a shelving standpoint. So now you have an app that's in the field and there's no more guessing. And the app just does it. You just have to point it. And even more interesting, what they found is you could point it to your competitors and see how they're stocking their shelves as well and get some other artificial intelligence. Oh, by the way. So some really interesting things coming out of that area.
All right, another question.
Okay.
Do you need an on-premises data gateway in order to share your apps with other people?
No, the apps are shareable from the cloud. The gateway is for data access that you want on-premise data access. If you're truly cloud-born, you don't need any gateway whatsoever. Okay. PowerApps portals, again, another area I haven't played with. And again, I think each of these would be their own seminar. And I like the non-cooking show seminar, but engaging with the portal. So I love the idea of that Power App that I created can run on a tablet, a phone with Intune. Like, okay, I hate to do a product pitch here, but with Intune, the Power Apps player is already MAM enabled. So now, not only when you think about custom dev, you have to create your custom dev and you have to think about containerizing and rolling that application out to maybe a person's phone. Well, now with Intune and Power Apps, the player's enlightened. So it knows that, hey, this data is corporate data. So you get rid of the player, you get rid of all those apps. So, and then and also now you can create portals with these apps. So you can really start to create that multiple environment as they show here. And I like this is pulling end to end is really starting to see that without a lot of code, and I don't want to offend any developers on the call because I do think there's a lot of you can do, and the formulas can get complex. And I have seen people who, when you're using code, you think about reuse, you think about common schemes. There's ways to theme these things. There's some things to do easily, but you can also see as, boy, I have variables all over the place. I don't use the right variable names. I've seen people hard code things.
Why aren't they going out to just an Azure function if it gets that complex?
Well, that's what they should do, right? Like at some point you can get to where you're like, hey, use it as your function and do something that way. And one of the things I wanted to do here was I wanted to go to create an app from, I think I picked this onboarding tasks app. So I just took one of these apps similar to creating it from data, but there's these templates that wire things up for you and pull together different things. So the composite app that I want maybe is my to-do list, my planner, and maybe my inbox. I've started to look at my inbox. It's gotten a little bit carried away. Like I have 400 items in my inbox. I've started to parse it so that I can parse it with Power BI and then pick the receiving domain that I came from, so my customer.com. So I click on customer and it shows me all the emails from my customer. And so again, I've left something in that inbox because I haven't got to it. And somehow it's gotten 400 emails deep. And I just need to look at the 50 that are from my customer to figure out, have I missed anything? So apps like that are very, help that personal productivity. So here I created an app from a template. It uses all Office 365 permissions, but it wants to make sure that I have the right account. So it shows me I'm using your Microsoft accounts, and the app creates all the backend information, all that templating stuff is there. And I just wanted to do a quick show here because you get a lot of other out of the box functionality with the SharePoint site. Or with the SharePoint site, with the out of the box template. Sorry, that was only is that. And if I run the app, I do something like say, hey, there I am, because I'm connected. It found me in my Office 365. I say, get started. It pulls out, this is my boss and my team members on the page. So now it's really pulling in information from that Microsoft Office graph, and you start to see the power of what you're doing. And you go in and you create these tasks. And as these tasks are created, they're actually added to my to-do list or planner or wherever I need it to be. And I can go to the different tabs and see the different things that need to be, like who my boss is, get onboarded. And that's an out of the box template that you can start modifying. So to your point, start with PowerApps at the center, and then you can start to bring in the rest of Microsoft. I'll say Microsoft, I'm a Microsoft guy. This could be Amazon. There's connectors to all these things. This could be Twilio. This is a pure Microsoft environment where you're going to use Azure Data Services. It doesn't have to be. There's no reason you couldn't build connectors to other services that are already available in the cloud, or that you have an API. You can create custom connectors. So I connected to the Microsoft Translator app earlier in this demo. You can create your own custom connectors if you have APIs at your company that you want to use. All of that is doable. It's pretty straightforward, and there are online and docs that'll walk you through it.
All right, so we just have a question that came
Sure.
up. It said, do you have the ability to integrate with custom/third-party DLLs? So it would be through a custom connector?
Yes, you'd have to create a custom connector and some API level. So how you would bubble that, it's been a while since I've been a DLL guy, but I would guess that you'd have to take that to some place where you can create an API for that.
Yeah.
And then you create with the custom connector. And I only did it once. I did it as, again, I've done some dev, but more Visual Basic, not C++, SQL dev area. As I understand it, you need to create a JSON file, which is your signature, and sets up the security for that. And you create a key so that you're passing a token through from your service, so that all of that security is in place. So that would be the thing with the DLL. So yes. So
Right.
hate to say no to questions. That one, again, I'm trying to think of like, oh my God, that must be a very valuable DLL. So again, the services that are connected, and I got into the Power Platform for the cognitive services piece of it. And here's the really interesting. So when I went through and I did this application, so I did create this translation app, and I thought, I'd really want this in Teams. So I am a customer service rep. I have a team of customer service reps, and one of the tabs within my team could be a Power App. So that's what this is demoing, that just boom, snapped right into on the apps page there's a export to Teams, and once you share it, it's available so that you can bubble it up in Teams. If you want more information, so a couple of things that here, the Power Platform fundamentals, there's stuff on docs.com. The link is here. I don't know if you guys take the slides and post them.
We do, and we will.
Yeah, so it's a little easier because I always put these things on there and people are frantically right now typing as fast as they
we're going
can.
to post all this stuff, we'll have links on the BA website.
Okay, cool. And then I went to eventscollab365.community. That's also where I learned that while the cooking show demo is great, and I'm sitting there nodding all the way along, and then I go back to try and do something, somehow I missed some steps. So, but the Events Collab 365.community, I signed up for their PowerApps like seminar. They had like 8 seminars there. One was on cognitive service. I believe they use text analytics. One of the most valuable ones that I go back to was controls, where the instructor took all of the controls and created this crazy control and showed you what each control can do. Probably worth the price of admission. I think I paid like $60 for it, but that class was worth it. And then if the last one is the events that came out of Ignite. So there are some really good learnings. How to set up PowerApps at scale in governance for your organization. Very worthwhile is out there. The top 10 things of PowerApps, another very good session out there. So
in terms of ALM, so when you go ahead and publish like version 2 of your Power App, it's just available.
Yes,
to the people who have installed, correct?
You know, and this is one of those ones where I did not practice this, so that always gets a little bit damaging.
Improv.
Yeah, is it details? So here's the details for an app that I have, and I can go in and I can see the various versions of this app. So I only have one version, but then I can publish it and go back and forth. So if I were to go in, I don't know if you want me to go down this path.
So a end user has to take no action to get version 2. It just happens when they fire up the app.
When they save it.
Well, you save it. And
you save it, yes.
Yeah, but if it's on my phone, I'm going to get version 2 as soon as you publish it, correct?
Exactly. When I publish it out, yes. Yeah. When you publish it, then it goes out to wherever, like to the app, if it's on your phone, if it's in your browser or where you have it set up. If you come to Bruce Szabo's environment, let's say we're collaborating on a team and you go in to look at apps, you'll see the apps. I can share it as read-only or user of the app or a contributor. So I can make it so you and I can edit it and republish it. And then I see Grant on the phone. So Grant would just be a user of the app. So we can do things like that as well. But yeah, lots of different things. And this is where like the connections that this is using and flows that may be using analytics, like there's a lot when I get back to the governance of this. Who's using that? What kind of connectors are they using? Who's using premium connectors? Can we reclaim licensing? A lot of that is being built into this. And a side note, all this is being backed by Azure. So the Power Platform runs on Azure, which is when we get in the licensing, like, hey, why is the licensing, it's confusing because you're trying to slice up Azure services and leverage them in Power Apps. And quite honestly, even as I think about it, it's like, how do you, figure out compute for a user for an app type thing? Yeah, not your problem. We have trained professionals that do that for you. So for further information, follow up. You saw my name at the beginning, but these are the team that support it. I want to thank Ben Ellis for letting me have this opportunity.
Bruce, for doing this.
Yeah, and anything I can help you out with, let me know. So I'm at the end. So I'll go back to that previous one and leave it up there.
Okay.
So
yeah, keep any questions coming in. Let's do the licensing. All right. So here's a scenario. So in October, Microsoft changed licensing, making SQL Server a premium connector.
Yes.
All right. Let's see. Considering most enterprise level apps need a database backed, this has an effect of causing people who are leveraging Power Apps to now, or through their Office 365 subscription, now have to license up for the SQL connector.
That is 100% true.
Okay.
Yeah, like I'm not going to walk away from yes.
Okay.
I feel a lot of accusation in that question being like, guys, I'm not seeing who's right in. I'm going to go back now. But yes, that is 100% true. That is what we did. I am told if you have a Microsoft account representative, that there was potentially some grandfathering in depending on when it happened to you that people built it.
Okay.
So as a Microsoft person, it was a real bummer to me. So Power Apps, if you have Office 365 E3 or higher, you get this ability to create, hey Grant, that's you, custom apps for Office 365, these composite apps like the one I showed you. All of that can be done for free. If you're using SharePoint to store your information, some of those connectors, but what was happening is people were starting to do some crazy things rather than maybe go to where they should. So we had SQL as a connector, but not CDS. And actually CDS made more sense as a as a data store for customers. So arguably they were doing the wrong thing because one had a cost and one didn't. So Microsoft, from an engineering standpoint, said it's better to put them on the same platform. And I realized right away that that lost value to it. Like, I'm not trying to hide from the fact, but that really was, to me, it was people were going to SQL Server rather than CDS when the engineering team thought CDS was there, and it was because it was free. Like, it was like, okay, you're doing weird things now. And potentially some crazy scenarios were happening because of the nature of that. So,
Okay, so the bottom line is you right now, from now going forward, you have to license up your SQL Server Enterprise, SQL Server
it's a premium connector.
Azure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the SQL Server, all those connectors, yeah.
And turn it on through
Yeah.
Azure and then connect through it.
Yeah, so as you get, if you build a Power App that goes beyond SharePoint,
Mhm.
and so don't get crazy with SharePoint either, right? Like 5,000, if you have a list that has more than 5,000 items, you're starting to get the crazy SharePoint thing, and you're going to see the performance on your Power App. with that.
Now, the Common Data Store, that is free if you have an E5 Office 365?
No, so Common Data Store is a premium
It's
license.
premium too.
Yes, and
Okay.
again, I am the technical side of it, and I'm not in the Power Platform licensing side of things. So when we get into the nuances and subtleties, it gets beyond me, but I also don't want to be the Microsoft guy. So I'm the tech guy, I don't care about, I work for Microsoft, for God's sakes, ask me licensing, and I'll at least tell you, like, okay, this is more of a thesis question than we're playing chess, not checkers.
Okay, so
Trying to figure that out.
CDS is also a licensed event.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, it really is. There's no, and licensing for Power Apps is out. Because Power BI is available via one of the E suites, in E5 you get Power BI, you don't get the rest of the Power Platform in the
Got it.
Microsoft Office 365. Only Power BI is the only unique one like that. So I will say I work for Microsoft. I'm not in the licensing, so please don't shoot the messenger, but I want to get the message out.
Okay, so we had what is CDS? That's the Common Data Store.
That's the Common Data Store. So what that is an enterprise level data store that you can choose to instantiate or not. To your point, when I instantiate it, then I need some licensing for that. But it comes a lot with a lot of business entities. The vision for CDS is that it becomes a common repository for the concept of customer. So we populate, Microsoft in a CDS populates an entity known as customer. And then that customer in a given environment is universal to
with
an
known
organization.
schema, basically.
Exactly, yes, with known data schema and metadata behind it.
So I don't have to get a customer table and like, oh, how am I going to store the zip and all this jazz, right? It's just there, ready to go in a open standard sort of way.
Right, and if you're in Dynamics, you're leveraging that. So now you can build a Power App that leverages, and you get Power Apps with Dynamics. So if you're using, I'm coming at this from the Power Platform thing, but if you're coming at it from the Dynamics, the world opens up, like customizations in the Dynamics environment. Now you're thinking about this mobile app that you want to be just the right way, and you don't want the full thing of Dynamics, so you can create a Canvas app that's leveraging CDS. It gets crazy cool.
Okay, what kind of app is good for Power App and what isn't?
If you start getting into, so I showed Canvas apps. So I did not get into the complexity of a model app versus a Canvas app. So for a Power App, I don't know a candidate that would be good or bad. But if we start saying a Canvas app. So I showed you a lightweight form-esque thing where I want to create a service. I think you can do almost anything with it, but it depends how crazy you get. I think when you need an API, you're going to have to go to somebody to create that API. And now you have a decision point. Do I create an API that serves my Power App, or am I better off just creating an app? Because at the end of the day, I'm going to have so many of these APIs, and they're going to be leveraged by a React or Angular or something like that. I think it becomes where you can code it.
All right, this is actually a test question on some of the fundamental tests. And so the answer that Microsoft proposes for this is that what is the who is doing the design time work? Is it a business analyst or is it a developer?
Got it.
Okay, and then what are the extra challenges / hurdles for the developer that need to jump through? Is there some wacky authentication that needs to happen or whatever, right?
Yep.
And so you would, if I noticed this theme that if you have business people who are kind of driving the app definition, who are power users, if you will, start with these design time tools.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. That's a good point. It's, yeah, better answer than mine.
Okay, so there is no free database connection in PowerApps with all this CDS and SQL talk.
Correct.
Okay, the
Yeah,
answer is correct. There
Yeah,
is
yeah.
no.
I don't want to lead you down. I believe that, go look at it and figure out how to do it. And there was, and that's the really challenging part for it. Right now, if you want a free data source, you're looking at something like Excel, or you're looking at like SharePoint lists.
Yeah.
Free with, and I better air quote free, because you have a
Use the-
Microsoft 365 E3 license probably in order to. There is a concept of a developer community edition, like a community thing, and you can do whatever you want in that community. So personally, you can create your own thing and do whatever you want, as I understand it. I have never, so I'm in a unique position. It's hard I don't have Bruce's E3 license, so I haven't played around with the community edition. I do have a demo tenant, but I never got here. If you go look at PowerApps community, you can log into a tenant and get full access, but it's only you that can use it. You can't share it with the rest of your organization. So in that case, you could do a free thing. CDS still
But it's
requires
not for
space.
production.
You would never get into production.
All right, is there a path to migrate an app from the PowerApp platform into a Visual Studio solution? No, it's totally independent.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
cloud.
It's not so much that it's cloud. I just think the artifacts aren't there.
Right.
There was something a lot in part of the development. There was a Cordova back into this, but I think that's changed, and that was more on the Sienna. Like, I've watched the evolution of this since something called Project Sienna. I don't know of it. I haven't seen it advertised anywhere, so I may be wrong. And there's always some crazy dev on GitHub guy that does it, but I don't know of anything from a Microsoft supported where we've created that lifecycle chain yet.
All right, cool. All right, so that wraps up the questions for now. And if anybody has any more, you can send them to the contacts up here on the screen. Grant, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah, well, thank you, Bruce and Jason. On behalf of our team and Bruce, we'd like to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. As we mentioned, a replay of this webinar will be available on the Bennett Adelson website within the next 48 hours. Also, please feel free to contact any of the Bennett Adelson team shown here on the slide for further information about the Power Platform and how it can help your organization. And have a great afternoon, and thanks again for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Grant.
Yep, thanks, everybody.
Bruce, take care.
Thank you.